Group drumming music therapy, in a manner similar to that of exercise, laughter, meditation, and other interventions that are practiced and enjoyed on a regular basis, can contribute to the well-being of many individuals with chronic illness. It's an effective approach to healing emotions, for stress release, for self-confidence, and for feeding our soul. Drumming places us in the here and now, the present moment. This is our powerful and sacred space. And that really is a good descriptor for Jaqui Barrett, whom is our guest today from rhythm.com. And I met Jaqui back around 2002, and it was my pleasure to work with her for a short period then. And we've recently reconnected. Thank you so much. So good to see you after all these years. Yeah. Can you share with us, Jaqui, a little of the journey that brought you to be doing what you're doing now?
Yes, so I think, as with many people, we find ourselves in certain lines of work or living conditions as a combination of good things that have happened in our life, but also some difficult things that happen. And, you know, I do believe there's always often a treasure in those difficult things that sort of thrust us into doing something we hadn't initially thought of. So my background a little bit is that I've always been interested in psychology, and I was always drawn to work which often was work that was working with people who had, you know, problems or dealing with trauma. In hindsight, I guess I was trying to make sense of some of my own experiences in my upbringing. So although I was brought up in a fairly privileged family, but underneath the privilege and the big white house on the hill, there was quite a lot of abuse, really. And again, for my generation, as kids, you know, hitting seems to be not an uncommon occurrence. Yeah. But there was a lot of violence in the family, and I was eldest child, so, you know, I somehow kind of had it through my life. I left home as a teenager, and by the time I was 20, I was married with 2 children. I was divorced at 30, and then went into a pretty deep depression for quite a few years, really. Again, there was no help around in those days, and so I struggled through trying to make sense of what was going on with me. I certainly felt like a failure in my life, but I had an image of being someone who was coping really well. We get good at hiding often, yes, you know, our pain inside. So initially I decided to study psychology really to try and make sense of myself, of why I was mucking up life so much. That's what it felt like. And so that study of psychology then led me down the track to then study counselling, psychotherapy, and many subjects around the health and healing and wellness and alternative stuff and all that. So I ended up working as a counsellor, both for agencies and a lot of private practice, for over 25 years. And I was drawn again to work around, you know, physical, sexual abuse, family violence, drug and alcohol, all that sort of stuff. That was just where I was drawn. I also worked for the Justice Department for many years as a probation officer. So I did a lot of work in the courts and worked in prisons, both men and women's prisons, which is all that stuff has actually been really helpful for this rhythm therapy that I ended up doing. But it was pretty heavy duty work for years, and it did take a toll on my own health and also on relationships. So my first marriage, as I say, ended when I was 30. I then remarried 10 years later, and then that second marriage failed. And again, I went into this depression. And I knew then that I needed to just start over and, you know, really make a new start. So I left my home, which was in the Wairarapa down in New Zealand, and I moved to Waiheke Island. Now, I didn't know anybody on the island at all. I don't even know why I moved there. I just felt a really strong sense that this is where I needed to be. And it felt safe that nobody knew me. So I was able to kind of reinvent myself in a way. I didn't have to bring all that stuff, you know, all my fears and stuff like that with me. So I set up on the island, and I worked again as a counsellor for quite a few years, and again still in that same line of work, in the ACC abuse kind of family violence work. But after a few years of that, I was quite burnt out, and one of the things I did do on Waiheke, which is a bit of an alternative island, certainly was back in the day when I was there in the 90s, is that a workshop came to town, and it was drumming, hand drumming, African drums. I thought I'd go along. I didn't really know anything about it, never touched a drum in my life. I wasn't very good at it. I was all quite uncoordinated, really, but there was something about it that just I loved. And I actually bought a drum that day. There was a couple of drums the guy had for sale, and I ended up buying a drum. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but it was, you know. And what I found is that because of the space I was in, was still dealing with a second marriage breakup and sort of, you know, broken heart and then all the other stuff, that drumming kind of gave me respite. It allowed all those thoughts to just slow down and go away for a bit. And so for the next few years, I just basically just drummed with friends. We drumming circles, you know, full moon drumming, much to my kids' horror that I was sort of getting into this really weird stuff, and in a few local bands. And so, yeah, when I was playing music, I was in my happy place. And of course, what I've realised now, when I look back, it's because it combined my two passions: drumming, music, rhythm, and also wellness. Yeah. So that's kind of, I sort of fell into it by accident, really.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly where I came across you, but I know I had other friends who were part of drumming groups, so it was probably through those connections. And I spoke to the owner. I was doing 2 pilot programs in a rest home, the Anne Marie Rest Home at Blockhouse Bay, and we had created a very extensive and varied activities program. And as part of that outreach, I thought, oh, this would be perfect. So I approached the owner, and to my surprise, she agreed to you coming and doing a 10-week program, which just was unheard of, actually. And in you came with all of your gear, so much rhythm equipment, so many drums and other instruments. And, you know, we probably in those first couple of sessions might have had a half to 2/3 of the residents. Some didn't come, they kind of were, oh no. But by about week 4, most were attending.
Yes, the group's growing, yes.
Yes, and there were 29 residents in that rest home. And one of my reasons for wanting the residents to have it is I love the work of Professor Howard Gardner. He says we don't just have IQ, we have many intelligences. Musical intelligence is one. And it's not always about being able to play something, it's just that appreciation of music in all its forms. And my biggest takeaway from that 10-week period, and I don't know if we ever met afterwards for me to share, I'm sure I would have, were probably 2 of the residents. One lady, and I remember distinctly, it was week 4. She'd been, she was in her early 60s, burnt out alcoholic, not able to, she was mobile but not able to feed herself, could occasionally have short conversation, but very limited thinking ability, and coordination was not good. But she came and sat each time and attempted to do things, and in week 4 she just had the 2 little sticks,
Yeah.
and she got a rhythm. And you could just see her face, which was often quite vacant looking, it just lit up. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had no idea that was going to happen. So extraordinary. At the end of that session, when you left, she said, I'd like to make a phone call. And that was a fairly long conversation for her. And I'm like, of course. And she wanted to ring her ex who lived on Waiheke Island.
Oh.
And I thought, yes, of course. And she said, will you stay with me? And I said, I will. And so she rang him and she said to him, I know you come and visit me sometimes. And, you know, all these years, she said, I have never, well, these are not her exact words, but she said, all of these years, I have never owned my alcoholic background. She said, you know, you sexually abused my daughter time and time and time again, and I was so addled with alcohol and out of my mind, I did nothing to intervene. And again, not her exact words, but she said, I now have this awareness. This is like an incredibly long conversation for her to be having. And knowing that, I don't want you to come anymore. And that was the end of the conversation.
The power to be able to speak your truth.
Oh. And then she turned to me and she said, can I see a priest? And I'm like, oh, of course, you know. And so we called a minister and he came, and I usually finish at 3 or finished at 3 on those days. And I stayed till however long, you know, for the minister to be with her. So he left about 5. And when she came back out from the minister, she had actually closed back down and was back in this kind of vacant space, not relating very much. But from that point on, she used to suffer with anxiety attacks 2-3 times a day. Any change of routine wouldn't take much to have her really upset and disturbed. And from that point on, there were no more anxiety episodes. And I was just astounded at, you know, I don't have proof other than, you know, what was happening, but in some way, her body mind was opened up that day, and she became free, and, you know, was able to articulate at a level she's probably never done in her life, and then find peace with her maker in whatever form that took with the minister. It just profound, you know, the level of healing that occurred for her. And then there was another Maori lady who didn't come till way towards the end, and she shared, I don't know, maybe about week 7, 8, away from the session, about being raped as a young woman, and all of the angst and pain around that, and she'd never told anybody. So, you know, this incredible thing that's happening with the way I think, it you know, I'm going to ask you, you know, does it create like unity and trust? Like, what happens in the body?
Those stories don't surprise me at all, and I see things that happen, and I don't know why it happens. I don't really know why a lot of this happens. I just want to go back a little bit. When I was on the island, just by chance, I came across this training on Hawaii, which was around drum circle facilitation. I don't know why I needed to do that. I'm not a traveller normally, but I knew I had to go to that. And I went over there with clutching my drum, and the workshop itself was fantastic. But the moment for me, the aha moment for me, was I ended up one night talking to a couple of therapists who were using the drums, working with people with the elderly community, people with Alzheimer's and dementia. Absolutely would have been the last group that I would have thought to bring to do drum therapy with. I'd sort of thought, oh, it'd be fun with teenagers, you know. So it was a really profound moment. And when I came back to New Zealand, I started researching, and I decided then that I needed to move off the island and move into the city, do some research, and actually start to work out how can I deliver some of these rhythm-based programs in the community, such as the older people and mental health, brain injuries, all these groups that I would have never thought of actually trying to do it with. And I decided to give myself a year that I would, and if it didn't work in a year, I could go back to counselling. I needed a break anyway. I was a bit burnt out, you know, with all my work. So your group, actually, from memory, was probably my first group working with an elder community. So I was not really knowing how this was going to work either. So, but it certainly doesn't surprise me to hear that I see magic a lot. So what is it? Look, you know, some of the things that I'm aware of is that when we drum, you know, you mentioned at the beginning, you know, we become in the present moment. You know, it reduces tension and anxiety, and it's a de-stressor. You know, we can go into when a whole group of people are playing music together, and we forget about performance anxiety and stuff like that. Then we go into a really relaxed state. We have fun, and having fun, as you know, because it's your thing, that's a huge healer. You know, having fun is such a big healer. I think goes with music, animals, gardening. You know, I think there are certain things that we could, just natural things we can do that really help with our health. It also reduces stress, and as we know, you know, stress it's a killer. You know, it's often contributes to many of our diseases and things like that, like heart attacks and strokes and things like that. So it produces a much deeper sort of self-awareness as well. It sort of synchronizes brain activity. It's quite a fascinating thing when you start to really kind of go into what's underneath. You know, on the surface, we're all having fun, we're playing music together, we're learning, we can see it's a bit about coordination and group activity and all that. But and my kind of special interest as well is what's going on therapeutically. Why is this somehow working when talking therapy doesn't necessarily always be the one that we can go? So it definitely synchronizes the both left and right hemispheres of our brain. It helps with the inner guidance of intuitive knowing, as well as that sort of left side, which is about, you know, common sense and things like that. It induces an altered state. You know, 20 minutes of drumming, or playing music, we go into an altered state, and we can see the power of music. You can hear a song on the radio or whatever. Music can reduce us to tears. It can bring back amazing memories or sad memories. It can. It's a pain relief. You know, why do people, when they're running marathons, a lot of people have music, or you go to the gym and you've got good thumping music. You try doing those exercises with no music, it's a hell of a lot harder. And even in the war, you know, they often had the snare drum when the soldiers were marching. It's not because they love music, it's because it helped put people into an altered state. So it becomes sort of a pain relief. We get a sense of connectedness with others. When I'm playing music, it doesn't matter whether someone's got really high needs, or whether they're a good drummer, or whether they can only just barely hold a shaker and do that. We start to... You're right. We start to, you know, that whole connectedness is a really powerful thing that we're doing there. So so it enhances our sort of our sense of empowerment, and it's a creative expression. It's a non-verbal expression. So a lot of the people I work with, you know, one of my groups is the aphasia group that I have, and every year we are one of the items at their Christmas party. And, you know, we do 3 or 4 numbers, and the first time we did it, I noticed there were people sitting out in the audience, they're family and friends, you know, and we're singing Yellow Submarine or something, I don't know, and they're all having fun, and they've got their yellow hats on, and, you know, and I noticed people had tears down their face, and it wasn't because we were so bad, it was because they were so touched that here were people who had trouble often just saying a sentence, were drumming and singing at the same time. Now, I don't know how that happens. They say, oh, you push us really hard, and you know, but we do it, and we do it with an immense joy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of, the other thing is people don't see it as a therapy. And I think that way they can relax. You know, they're just doing some drumming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a knack, I do have a knack, I think, of being pretty intuitive and being able to connect with people who maybe have a special need. I find that really, I really enjoy that. I love to be able to kind of see if I can experience their world a bit,
Yes.
rather than trying to force them out into my world. But we can do with rhythm, then they often become alive and present. I had an amazing experience one time in a dementia unit, and we all sing all the old songs, you know, and they can't remember what they've had for, you know, morning tea, but they can remember the words to You Are My Sunshine or Waltzing Matilda or whatever we're going to decide to play, and bang drums and shakers and things. At the end, this woman, lovely woman, came up to me and she said, oh, that was such fun. And I said, yeah, drumming's good, isn't it? Music's cool. And she said, well, yeah, I liked the music, but she said the thing I really liked was all the memories that it brought back.
Oh, yeah.
Because we'd be singing these songs, and then they'd start to tell me about when they were 17 and they had this yellow dress that had these frills on it that their mother had made, and that they went to this dance and they were singing a song. And, you know, like, that's the powerful bit. I drove home from that. That was really, it touched me in that, you know, it's not really about the music. Well, you know, the rhythm and the drums all help, but it is about something else that's, you know, within. And the funny thing on that same group, I was quite tired that day because I'd done 2 or 3 groups, I think, and I was sort of running out of ideas, and we had just sung You Are My Sunshine. And I couldn't think of anything else. I thought, oh gosh, we've just done every song I know. So I thought, oh, I'll put it to them. So I said, okay, it's time for requests. What's a song? What shall we do next? And this lovely lady, she put her hand up. She said, can we do You Are My Sunshine? And I went, yep, that sounds good. Even though we'd just done it, they couldn't remember they'd just done it. So it's such, you know, there's magic that happens with music, rhythm. It's our heartbeat.
Yes.
I think it's within us all, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's different from being an amazing musician, because that's not how I work. I do come across people who are amazing, and I always acknowledge that. But we can all shake a shaker, or we can all tap a drum. You know, some of the people, I work with preschoolers. I go into kindergartens, and then the next group might be a dementia unit, and then the next group might be in the brain injury unit, guys that have fallen off motorbikes. It just seems to work with everybody in some way.
Yeah. I remember I joined from time to time John Cameron and Menno Bessling. You would know those guys.
Yeah, he's up here. He lives up here in Puhoi, where I am.
Okay, and trying to think who else. Leo. And would join them regularly, actually, in their drumming circles. And, you know, we'd meet and have a meal and drum after dinner. And I was never particularly good, but I just loved it. I loved being able to get into that beat and that repetitive beat. And it was I never tired of it. There was just something very enrolling and, you know, that, you know, maybe it's that repeating pattern. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a big part of that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's very much about pattern, repetitiveness. And yeah, I do. I think and that might be where we met, at
Could
one
have
of those
been.
groups.
That could have
I
been,
think it
yes.
was actually I think it's just brought that back.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You know,
Yeah, see,
the,
I mean, wasn't a natural drummer. I wasn't someone, I'd always loved music, and I used to be more of a dancer, really. I was always, I loved to get up and dance. But there was something when I started drumming, and like I said, I wasn't a natural at it. But I loved it. And, and now I can drum and I lose all sense of time. I just go into this really relaxed state. And, yeah, it's my meditation, I think.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So if part of my inquiry since I've been doing my work since 2001 has been exploring, the role of humour,
Yeah.
not just fun, but humour and different humour styles, and how we can use humour, and to certainly bring it into the workplace as a method of enhancing communication, because you can't have humour without a high trust environment. So in terms of your own life, how would you describe your sense of humour?
I think humour is really important, and one of the things I notice I do with every group I start with is somehow I try and get us laughing quite quickly. And it can be sometimes just from something really funny. I might drop something, or but if you've got the group and they laugh with you, it's kind of like that settles everything down.
Yeah.
The humour I particularly love, I love that I love wit. I like the way people can play with words. I like intelligent humour.
Yes.
And I like the British comedies. I notice often, just before I go to bed at night, I will often online go into one of those English sort of comedies, like what's it called? What's that one where they tell a lie? You got to work out if they're telling a lie or that they're being on. Is it whose line is it anyway? But some of those ones that, and I find if I have a laugh before I go to bed,
Yes.
I always sleep really well, actually.
Yeah.
I don't like things that are too smutty. I don't mind a little bit of smut if it's clever. I can have a good laugh.
Yeah.
But there is a certain type of, in some of the Kiwi humour, I just think it's a bit like, ooh, it kind of just doesn't really appeal to me. The other thing, and I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, but I do find it funny sometimes with some of these clips with people falling over and stuff like that. I know, I don't want anyone to get hurt, but if someone gets caught up on a fence or they're skiting about something and they end up, falling over, I do find I end up sort of laughing about that once I realise that they're all right. So, but yeah, wit is the thing that gets me. Yeah. I like the Englishy kind of stuff.
What part of my outreach has been teaching people about the different types, so that their mind is broadened. There's a place for parody. There's a self-effacing humour is really good humour to use when you're presenting, working with groups or teams, because you're not making fun of anyone else. You're using your own experiences to educate or demonstrate a point, without making anyone feel vulnerable.
And life's funny, I really believe life is funny, and there can be things that we can find humour in most things. I won't say necessarily everything, but certainly in most things. And if we can come from a sort of an aspect where we can see the funny side in it, it just helps. I think it helps us deal with stuff, if I fall over, again, not if I hurt myself, because then it's not very funny at all. Well, in fact, actually, just a year ago, I fell down some steps and out in the country, and I ended up cracking a rib. So that part wasn't funny at all. It was really painful. And as I was lying there, in my hands, I had all this feed for the duck. I rescue animals, and so I was going out to feed these ducks and a neighbour's dog. I was in charge of the farm for this particular day. Slid down these stairs and flat on my back. And you know, you read about these amazing stories where animals sit and look after their, you know,
Yes.
wounded people. Well, not my animals. They came rushing in. They all ate all the food off me as I'm gasping for breath. You know, the dog and the ducks all around me took no notice that I was, you know, injured. And then they all buggered off. But like lying there, I just started to laugh in pain. You couldn't laugh too much, but it was just like it was just such a comedy. It was just such a comedy, and I do find humour in a lot of life, even the difficult bits.
Yeah. I'm doing a presentation at a conference coming up soon, and a little improv thing with the group, and I've called it a comedy of errors. And you know, it's all about harnessing the mischief and the capacity for fun with people, and you know, to bring all of that out. And you know, in improv, first thought is correct. So there's never anything wrong with in improv. You know, in life we second guess things, think, oh, I better not say that. If I say that, someone will get upset, so I better say this. So we come out with second or even third thought, which is really quite away from what our first thought was and the real truth. So, you know, we become polite. So helping people to break through that and to see what can happen when we can shed the mind chatter and the inner critic, and see what will come. And there's the genius of whose line is it anyway, and you know what comes through with them.
And I think, you know, when people are able to just, like, you know, say what's on top, we can often find it funny, because it's often stuff that we're hiding within ourselves, you know, and someone actually is able to have a laugh about it. I think it's a really important aspect. And I think we need, I also think people who are funny tend to be quite intelligent as well. I think there is an intelligent humour.
Yes.
We do need to be intuitive about it, and obviously, as you said, not using humour to ridicule or hurt someone. But I mean, it's like when people say are in a wheelchair and they can talk about some of the funny things that they have to experience. And in a way, it's a sort of relief, because often we don't know how to be around people who say have got special needs. And if they can, you know, if we can, it's not about joking about it, it's because it is a respectful, but we can have a laugh sometimes about some of the funny things that happen. And it just it helps us connect better. I laugh a lot with my clients.
Yeah. I don't know, do you know the comedian Philip Paxton? Yes,
I do. Yes, he's a good example.
Yes, I worked with Philip years ago on one of his performances at Auckland University Theatre, and I can't remember how the conversation began, but he turned to me and he said, "Who said you're the normal one?"
That's right.
And it was hilarious, you know, it was like, yes. So I forget what I'd said, but obviously something that was about inability or disability. And so, you know.
I think if it's done, you know, and if it's done when we're talking, if it's from the heart and it's done with a really good intention, you can have such a fun conversation with somebody. You know, I love seeing the people laughing, and that. I did a group yesterday with some pretty high needs adults, just local really, and there's a woman there. She's just such a gorgeous woman. She's pretty non-verbal actually, but she laughs a lot. She finds life funny, and she loves drumming, and she always wants at the end, we've got to do the hokey tokey song, and
Yeah.
she gets up and she's, you know, she's twerking, you know, and we're just in hysterics because she's just in another space. She's laughing and dancing, and she kind of is performing for us, actually. Yes. She knows we're connected and we're all with her and we're all drumming and singing, and, you know, and it's like, that's what my job's about.
Yes, yes, you know, and that, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, we've all have the capacity to self-express, and we've got strength in certain areas.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
That performance that I did with Philip, the show was called Stand, and he built this scaffolding, and he was a puppet in a harness with various ropes and ties to his limbs, and there was probably about 7 or 8 of us who were responsible for managing his limbs. So he's in a harness, suspended off the floor, doing this performance to stage, and we're all in black, moving his limbs. So, you know, he has cerebral palsy, so the limbs are contracted. And so we had to be so sensitive with our fingers to sense when we'd reached the limit of where, you know, an arm or a leg could be extended. And it took a long time to bring that together. Months. We were several months rehearsing. And, you know, that was, he surrendered his body to us. And I love him for that, for the lessons that everybody got. And I remember one of the stage directors chucked a tantrum and left one time, and no one knew how to put together the ropes and the pulleys. And that was when it all fell into place. It was like, right, we now have to work together in a way. Someone else was, you know, feeding directions, but now we need to solve it. And no one person had the skill to do it on their own. So to come together and then really get sensitive to his body. So there's something about that in how we be when we connect deeply with others, getting that sense of who's in the room and where we can go and where we can't go, being appropriate or not. And, you know, we get a sense of where we can go and how far we can go. So there's opportunity sometimes to be really preposterous, and other times that's just not on. And
he did. I did a big workshop. I can't remember, it was years ago, but he was there. So maybe it was around the disability kind of organisation, but he was there, and I know he came in and did some drumming. And he's a very, very special man, actually. And you know, it's been through people. I've learned, most of what I've learned has been the connection, working with people and allowing them to teach me about, you know, it just, I learn a lot. And so I'm really grateful for every person that is dealing with, you know, their own often difficult things that they're having to deal with, you know, for their life. But some of them are just so positive and see, and can be, and really funny, some of them, but they, you know, it's, and then you can go outside and you meet someone who, you know, has got life, has pretty much given them a fairly decent, you know, hand of cards, and they're grizzling. They grizzle about the weather, or they grizzle about the coffee isn't hot enough, or, you know. And I think working in that whole special needs area has, for me, has just helps me kind of keep things in perspective. When I think things are tough, if I, you know, then I can just remind myself, actually, I'm bloody lucky, you know, they could be a lot tougher. And just to really appreciate just how lucky I am. And I think that's a big thing for your own mental health, you know, whatever is happening in life, you know.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No,
So,
they've been my teachers, lots of teachers along the way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So in closing, I just want to ask you, where does your biggest joy come from now?
Music, creating music with others. And that connection, I just love that. It feeds my soul. I live in the country, so, you know, I live in a barn at the moment. I don't know for how long. I know it's going to be pulled down, but, you know, I just have to kind of trust that I'll find another place. You know, I look out the window and it's just, you know, there's sheep in the paddocks and the goats and the chickens and the ducks, and I love that. I love being around animals. I enjoy growing food. I like to grow my own food and organic food, and just time with family and friends, really, and laughing. You know, like I said, I do often end the day with a comedy, watching a comedy, and be either music or a comedy. They are the two ways I end my day usually.
Yeah, awesome.
Especially for people, you know, like a lot of people, they kind of watch a lot of the news, and I know it's good to kind of know what's going on, but, you know, I think if you're going through a bit of a flat patch, don't watch the news. Give yourself a break. It's just, you know, a lot of it is just so negative, and we just get that sense of, I don't know what to do. You're far better than to just watch, you know, have a laugh or have your music or something until you get strong again.
So if people would like to connect with you and find out more, what's your website?
My website is www.rhythm.com. That's all one word, RHYTHMDOTCOM.
Yep.
And .com.
Yep.
So it's rhythm.com.com.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think if they or they could Google, and I'm sure if they put Jaqui Barrett drumming Auckland, my website will come up.
Yeah, wonderful.
I love talking about it. If the worst thing is I can't stop talking about it, and, you know, I've been doing this now 17 years, and I've always said to myself, when it stops losing sort of the passion, you know, I'll stop, because I should be retired now, but I just love it.
Yes.
And I love it, I think, because I get a lot out of it, you know, as well as I think other people get a lot out of it too.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, I think
contact me. I'm happy to chat about it.
The whole thing of, you know, retiring, I think it is a very different word these days. You know, you know, our physical body will govern that a little. But, you know, the Louise Hay, you know, didn't start her business till I think she was, you know, 60 or 61. And it's like, look at what she created in the prime of her life.
Well, I didn't start drumming till I was 50, in my 50s. So, and, you know, it became a bit of an addiction. Like, I've got like 100 drums, and I have had to say to myself, don't buy any more drums. And I am actually going to start kind of selling some, because I used to do big corporate groups as well, like team building. And that's, you know, the money's reasonable in that compared to working in special needs where there isn't much money at all, really. But I don't get the same sort of buzz out of doing those big corporate ones anymore. So I just want to cut back all that stuff and just, you know, work with, I've got a little group here of women who come in, and, you know, I'm teaching them, and we might do some drumming at the local market. You know, it's all just quite low level stuff. Or, you know, or I go in and work with, you know, a group, you know, like I said, with aphasia group or the Stroke Foundation or brain injury group. That's how I feel. I just, you know, just want to live, really, and can keep, you know, I'll keep going, I think, for a few more years. But I would have never thought if someone had said to me 20 years ago, "Oh, you're going to end up a drummer," I would have just thought you were crazy. Like, why would I even think about being a drummer? I never touched a drum. Yeah, but try it, because it's fun.
Jaqui, thank you so much for being with us. Look forward to chatting again at some point. And for the viewers, you've been watching the Laughter Channel, where human interest meets human interest. And, you know, we've heard today, you know, about, excuse me, musical intelligence, and the loved your recognition, Jaqui, of the intelligence behind humour. Humour can be very clever. And for me, I'm an avid reader, and I tell a lot of my clients, humour in and humour out. So you need to feed yourself in whatever form to read something funny, watch something funny, listen to something funny. And as you do, you don't have to study it per se, but your whole humour experience can be different, and then you can be more good-humoured.
It's one of the best pills, isn't it, you know, for our health, really, because when we're laughing, you know, there's a lot of changes go on in the body, goes on in the brain, but also we release endorphins and we release all sorts of other different chemicals in the body. And, you know, that's what helps keep us well and the enjoyment of life, I believe.
Yes.
Having a laugh.
Yes.
Good fun.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Pat.